Yeah, well, we're all pissed off, aren't we? Yeah. We're pissed off about all this bullshit that the orange pus bag is pulling. Yeah, this whole Venezuela thing is just totally ridiculous. And the thing of it is, all the money it's going to take to restore Venezuela to the or oil production that it once had, and then the oil companies are going to go in. They're the ones that are going to take over everything. Yeah, and Trump did that so he could suck their butts. That's what he did. Yeah, that's what the whole problem is. Now, what I'm talking about today is not that. We've all seen the crap that's happened since the cheese ball in chief has become in his second term. We've all seen this. The first year was just horrible, horrible, almost as bad as the pandemic stuff. See, the pandemic stuff is what got us into the economic condition that we're in. And the failure of that administration to effectively manage what happened. They were just like a bunch of chickens with their heads cut off running around. Yeah, only they had a long life, 4 years. My beef today, and where's the beef? Yeah, it's right here. Beef is right here. My beef today has to do with the people who still like this guy. Now, there were people who liked him early on, right? Because of their 4chan shit, because of the QAnon stuff and all that. And a lot of those were disgruntled New Agers, right? They were, once upon a time, they were what people like to call liberals, right? Okay, so they flipped to Trump because they thought this guy was the answer to their unanswered prayers, right? Right. What about the theory that JFK was going to return? He was actually alive, or JFK Jr. was actually going to return and he was going to help Trump run the country. The problem is the people who support Trump. It's not Trump. Trump could be ignored and shoveled off into his little retirement fiasco of a club, Mar-a-Lago. He could go there and we could all forget about him. Yeah, we could. We could do that really easily. The problem with Trump is that people supported him and people supported him. That's the problem. I was reading, I saw a video clip the other day where this guy goes up, one of these guys that likes to interview Trumpers, he goes up to this old man who's got a beard, really long white beard. It's a shame. I was like, God, why does this guy shouldn't have a beard. We should grab this guy and shave his beard off, right? And shave his head, take his goddamn ball cap and shove it up his head. No, we're not going to do anything remotely like that. No. What we have to call out, though, is here's the guy asked the interviewer asked him, well, how did you like what he did with the immigrants? Oh, I loved it. It's great. I love it. Okay. How do you like what he's done with the economy? Oh, it's great. I love it. It's everything. Every question he asked this guy with the nice beard was, I love everything he's done. How could you love what he's done? How could you love this shit? I mean, do you like to see, I think people have mean streaks in them. I know they do. And I know there's people out there that from day one have just really hated other people, right? Right. If you're not exactly like them, drink their beer, do everything they do the same way they do, then they don't like you, right? Especially if you look different. Oh my gosh, let you have a different color of skin. Let you have another ethnicity. Oh yeah, no. These people are the problem. Here's a little bit of good old Mondo history here. As we go back, now I've been in the leftist movement, off and on for the last 45 years, right? Longer than that, 50 years I've been in the movement, right? Before that, I'm 72. No, I got involved when I was 16, 17. Okay, so that long I've been involved in leftist thinking and politics to a great extent. Well, these guys were always around. During Vietnam, it's the same guys. You don't like America, get the hell out of here. Love it or leave it. Yeah, you're not American. You don't support the troops. You don't support our effort in Vietnam. You know, if we don't take over Vietnam, it's going to be a domino effect. All the rest of the countries in Southeast Asia are going to fall like dominoes. And this had been propagandized into us from the watered down John Birchers that had propaganda influence in the press and otherwise. Right. And the John Birch Society, big time on a lot of the, oh my God, what a horrible bunch of shitbags. The problem, as I'm saying, is not the person in particular. It's the people that support him and why they support him. Right. Yeah, there was a lot of racism and stuff that went on with Vietnam. Yeah, we got to kill those gooks, man. All kinds of goofy shit. Well, look what happened after we left Vietnam. Well, over 1 million of Vietnamese died because of that damn war that we expanded and just, dumped poison, dumped herbicidal and poison all over the place, napalmed, killed people with bombs, did a whole bunch of wrong shit. And all it was an imperialist adventure. That's right. It got big time kicked off by the Gulf of Tonkin incident. There's always something. There's always some catalytic incident, like the weapons of mass destruction, like Grenada was being taken over by communists, right? Remember what happened there, right? Yeah. So Reagan has this invasion that goes into Grenada and tries to take, it's just horrible. It's horrible. Horrible. Let's look at our intervention in Latin America ever since the turn of the last century, the turn of the 20th century and before. Let's look at that. How we went into Latin America and sponsored coups and put in puppet dictators so that the United Fruit Company, here's the big call, the United Fruit Company screwed up a lot of Central America with all the banana stuff. Yeah, got their agricultural folks into uniculture, bananas, right? Well, some of them got into coffee too. These folks got away from raising their indigenous crops, which fed their families. This was bad. And did we put anything in place to make them all urbanized and middle class, white Americans? No, we didn't do that. We never do that. We don't do that anywhere. Look what happened in Vietnam. Vietnam took off on their own. Yeah, look at them now. Compared to what was going on under the scumbag puppet regimes that were in there beforehand, they're doing 1,000 times better. Oh yeah, well it is a communist country. Yeah, it does have a Marxist economy. Yeah, I haven't seen much about human rights violations. They're probably out there. Every country has human rights violations. That doesn't excuse them at all. So look what happens. Okay, so then after that, we've had numerous other smaller adventures. Then we go into Iraq. And the reason why was weapons of mass destruction, because Saddam Hussein was oppressing his people. Well, yeah, he sure was oppressing and had been oppressing his people. And then you had that stupid war with Iran, and that's where a lot of people got gassed before and after that. Yeah, he was a monster. And he deserved to be deposed, and he deserved the fate that he got, in my opinion. However, did we really liberate that country? No, we introduced intense civil strife, like a multi-factional civil war. That's what we did. And it's still not in a good place. No. And so there were actually servicemen that were interviewed in some of the documentaries that were done back then. I'll never forget this one captain. I believe he was a captain in the army. They asked him, he said, well, why do you think we're here? He said, it's for the oil. We're here for the oil. Well, you know what? Here's the weird part of that. We don't get much of that oil here in the United States. It mainly goes to Europe, right, and China now, okay? It doesn't come to us. So we were there for the oil, but we didn't get it. What we were there for was at the behest, actually, at least by proxy, of the oil companies that now control most of the oil in Iraq. Yeah, that's why we went. That's why. Now we're going to go to Venezuela. Okay, so we're not in there all the way. I don't know how much we're in there. They're not telling us how much they are not in there. They're not telling us anything about that. So Maduro goes on trial today, and he pleads not guilty to drug trafficking. He's not a drug trafficker. He's a fucking tin horn dictator. Yeah, he's a low-life dictator. But now, when you look up his record, the legacy they carried on from Hugo Chavez, okay, like him or not, he did good things for Venezuela. Okay, and way before he came on the scene, Venezuela in 1976 nationalized their oil industry. Yeah, how do you like that shit? Yeah, that's what they did. Yeah, yeah. And that's been going on. And that's why there's all this mean clamor about, well, some aspects of Marxism have done well there. Yeah. Now the communities are all broken down, cities and areas and cities, they're broken down into communes. Right. Communes, right? And the local communes, through their communal representations, okay, it's a better representation than we have here. That's for goddamn sure. Okay. Yeah. Our representative democracy is on the federal level and on the state level is a fucking joke. It is. It's a joke. It's a joke. Yeah. We haven't had a democracy really ever. Now, there's some cities and communities that do operate democratically. Every person has a vote in the fate of their organization. One person, one vote. Nobody has more votes or more power than another except the people that get elected to take care of the administrative stuff, which is really what government should be, as an administrative function. That's why we had so many people in civil service, right? It's an administrative entity. And we have a really big one, and yeah, some of it was wasteful. There was graft in some of it. Of course there was. There always has been, and there always will be. There's more now corruption and graft than there was before. And you have less people to do it. Yeah, what do? You fire 1 million people, and then what does that do? Oh, so now we don't spend as much, so that we don't have to worry about the big deficit that we're going to shove up your ass. Yeah, another, $4 trillion in deficit because you're giving people a huge tax break. Well, most of us that make under $400,000 a year are not getting much of a tax break. Yeah, we're getting some money. You get $1,000 extra or whatever. Or like me, I don't get any at all. I pay a lot. And okay, so I don't make a lot. I pay in a lot. I don't make a lot compared to what I pay in, right? I think I said federally, about 18% of my income goes to federal. Okay. Well, that's a lot, because what does that leave you with? Okay. Well, I don't like paying taxes. I never like paying taxes. Well, I do sort of like it now because a lot of it has gone for a very good purpose. DOD not being one of them. Yeah. So what do you got now? You got a bunch of guys. Now, DOD is a big scam operation. Okay. It's a $1 trillion scam, and it has been for a long time. Why do I say that? Well, I've been doing business with a lot of DOD contractors for a long time. Now, the people I work with, and what I do for them, the service or the product that I provide, they're great. I love them. They're great to deal with, okay? However, it's the main contracting groups, and I'm not going to name them because I don't want to hear from their legal team. But there's about 3 of them that I could name off the top of my head that are ripping the fuck of us off. And then you got that whole GSA structure, which allows a lot of organizations, companies to rip us off. Yeah. If we took all that waste and graft out of DOD, see, did you notice that Musk didn't go in there first? Didn't go in there at all. That should have been the only one we do for a whole year, is that, and clean that mess up. Yeah. $1 trillion waste, right? Well, 800 billion, no, it's been over $1 trillion for a while. Don't fool yourself. It's failed 5 audits. 5 audits by the government, right? Yeah. It's failed 5 audits. What does that tell you? It tells you that there's a bunch of thievery going on, and there always has been. Ever since World War II, and that's when it really got big time started. It happened in World War I also, but World War II is where it really got started, folks. I mean, you can read your history. I've read a little history in my life, okay? And I have picked up a couple of things here and there. Okay, so there's just so many misinformed things, so many mislabeled things. for instance, on communism. Well, we don't really have much communism around the world. Probably, I would say, probably Vietnam is the closest thing to communism that we have. How it works there, it's still not. It's still pretty much, state authoritarianism. I mean so it's not real communism, right? Communism, one person, one vote. Whole communities vote the fate of their community, right? That's real, and everybody shares in all of the revenue and all of the expenses. Okay? Well, I got a little soft on that because I think you can allow some capitalism and it might work. Well, there's models that say that it does, whatnot. Okay. At any rate, the problem is capitalism. That's the bottom line. There's some great books about capitalism and slavery that you could read, where capitalism built its biggest base on slavery. Yeah. That's why this country's so screwed up, because we didn't get rid of it until the 1860s. And then we didn't even get rid of it. It just changed forms. It changed into like the sharecroppers, the rednecks, actually almost indentured servitude almost. Right. So then you get a couple of communities, one in North Carolina and one in Oklahoma, where African-American people started making some money. They started getting up on top of it in the capitalist world. Oh, yeah, but the white racist, no good sons of bitches, they couldn't have that, could they? No, no. No, let's not have people of other ethnic extractions and, let's not have them get rich. Oh, God. And they hated the Italians when they came, and they hated the Polish when they came, and the Russians and the Russian Jews. And they, everybody that came from somewhere else, which everybody here except for indigenous Americans, and they all came from somewhere else a long time ago. Okay. Everybody here, I don't think there was any primates that evolved into humanoids here. No, I don't think there's no. So everybody came from somewhere else. Right. And there's nothing wrong with coming from somewhere else. What's wrong is when you come from somewhere else and you get discriminated against, you get called down as being less than human, all the different racist epithets and the xenophobia and all of that happens, okay? And that's because there's people who use that language and thinking and economics of it to keep other people suppressed and oppressed. The idea is not really oppression anymore, or subjugation. It's just dominance because of the money. It's all about the money. I mean, what do you got? How many billionaires do you have in this country? I think there's close to 4,000 billionaires worldwide. Okay. I forget how many there is here. I think we have the most by far. I kind of agree with Anand Giridharadas on that. Anand, I agree with him. We don't need billionaires. He's a tax them out of existence. They're the ones that should be paying all the tax. There was a supposed 90% tax during FDR. Okay. Well, as it turns out, when you run the numbers, hardly any of them got taxed that much. Right. They had lots. That's when the loopholes started getting built more and more and more. So now they have so many loopholes, they don't have to pay any goddamn tax. Yeah. Okay. Or very little. Or let's say this. Let's say you make $100 million in a year. Okay. And you only pay out 20% of that in taxes. Right. So you pay out 20%, which they don't. And then you also have your all business expense. So maybe you have a net profit of around 20 million. Okay. Well, shouldn't that be taxed? Like heavy? Like maybe like 75%? Over 50%? Yeah, it should be. Yeah. Does anybody really need that much money to have a good life? I mean, a really good life. I mean, okay, so I've made six figures, lower six figures for quite a few years. And I've had a great life. Yeah. And I spent most of the money. My bad. I'm the guilty one there. I spent most of the money, right? Not my money, right? It was my money. I made my money. And didn't pay taxes for a long time and got stung really hard for huge IRS bills, right? Right. Okay. And you know what? If I would have just paid my taxes, I wouldn't have had any of that trouble. And I probably would have saved up enough money to retire very comfortably now, right? Without being a multimillionaire. A millionaire, 4 or 5 mil, whatever. I don't think there's anything wrong with having that kind of money. I do think there's something wrong with having hundreds of millions or billions of dollars. Yes, I think there's something wrong with that. And you know what's wrong with that? Is that all was built on the backs of other people. And it's like a pyramid, like the old pyramid poster they used to have about capitalism. It's just like that in a lot of senses. And this is the problem. And then what's happened, I'm going to go back to my original thread here and we'll close this loop up. Why do people who do not benefit from his thinking and his practices like him? Why do they like Trump? They think he's a strong leader. He's not a strong leader. He's a weak fuck. Yeah, he's not strong. Strong leaders that ear him right the fuck down. Really. But he's got power, a lot of power, too much power for the person that he is. I don't think anybody needs that much power. I think that the country should be run by a collective of people, right? A big committee. Well, that's kind of what happened during Biden. I mean, his cabinet kind of ran things, right? And they did a hell of a good job, right? I don't think they cut Kamala in very much. I don't think they cut Kamala in very deep, okay? And in that sense, I guess there's a deep state. Well, you elected the deep state. You guys elected them this time. And here you are you guys, now a lot of you guys are finding out, a lot of you guys are saying, geez, why did I vote for that guy? No, I'm talking about independents and moderate type Republicans and conservative Democrats who voted for this guy because they thought, well, I didn't like what Biden did. Maybe he's going to do better. Let's give him a chance. You gave him a chance for 4 years before and he fucked up big time. Why? Because that's his history. That's who he is. According to one guy, how can you like a guy who has to wear a diaper all the time, has all these health problems, but denies all of it? How can you like that guy? A guy who really is pathetic and weak, but he's got so much power because of all the money behind him, because they get some of their agenda, the donor agenda gets taken care of. That's why those people like him. And they're a very small minority of us. Very small. They're like the 1% or the 1%, the 10th of the 1%. That's who they are. And that's your real deep state. They're the business people. They're the economic people. That's who they are. It's not a deep state of corrupt politicians. No, those are the puppets, right? No, the deep state are these fucking businesses and the rings of corporations that actually run everything. There's no conspiracy, folks. It's a business plan. And I've been telling you about that for a long time. This is going on YouTube. I was going to be TikTok to begin with because I had a beef with these cretins who like I have a member of my family, not immediate, but extended family, who was a war hero. Yeah, he really was. Okay. But he was in an unjust war and he was blowing guys' head offs in gunboats. Yeah. And he thought it was really cool to blow Viet Cong's head off. Yeah, right? He thought it was really cool. Yeah, he thought it was cool. Yeah. And these are the kind of people, and they're thinking, he still likes this guy. Now, Vietnam War was an unlawful order. Yeah, it was. It wasn't a declared war. Okay, it was a war. It was an unjust, it was really an illegal war. Okay? Yeah, Congress, they gave the executive branch some money for the war and all that kind of stuff. And, and then Kissinger got us out of there eventually, sort of, right? Yeah, well, now the Iraq and Afghanistan cost us like $6 trillion. Yeah, that was nice, wasn't it? Yeah, and all those defense contractors, all the suppliers, people $100 loads of laundry. Yeah, all those people. Yeah, man, they did well. Did we do well? No, we had the worst after that whole mess got not settled, but almost settled. We left there And we left the economy in horrible shape. We got then the first the dot-com bubble popped in 2000, right? Well, after that popped, that was a big problem. So then they started this war so they could pump up the economy. This is what the thinking used to be, especially amongst these neocons. Right, if you got an economic problem, just start a war. And we'll do like we did in World War II. We'll just build this thing all back. Well, they didn't build everything all back. They screwed things up worse. Much worse, folks. That's right. That's right. Yeah. $6 trillion between two wars. One of them, well, okay, so we're still in Iraq to a small degree. We're not completely out of Afghanistan, okay? Waste of human life on all sides of the equation. Total waste. All wrong. Everything all wrong in both those wars. Wrong. Wrong. I'm not saying that Saddam didn't need to go. No, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that the Taliban are an evil force, depending upon your viewpoint. Now, if you're a radical Islamist, then you might like the Taliban. Yeah, well, women got to wear burqas. They can't go to school. They're just here for us to, to mother our children, right? And cook our meals. That's what they're here for. That's a lot of the thinking that's amongst the scum, okay, that's in control of things right now. And there is this faction in the MAGAs of scum who like war, who want us to be the greatest country in the world, to dominate everyone in the world, right? They want us, instead of for everybody to have a great life. They have health care. They don't have to worry about health care. It's provided. Yeah, you pay for it. Yeah, you pay for it out of your payroll check, but it's provided. You don't have to pay anything extra. And your employer doesn't have to suffer because of it, right? What the hell? And we want to have enough money to spend on entertaining ourselves. Disposable income. Yes, there's nothing wrong. We can all have that. Yeah, there's no reason to have poverty in this particular country at all. We should not have it. And the billionaires could bail us out of it real easy. Real easy. Philanthropic cooperatives, where the money goes directly to the people who need it. They get housing. In Finland, everybody has housing. Yeah, there's other countries like that too. There's poorer countries that everybody has housing. Yeah. In Venezuela, they all have housing now. Yeah, do you know that? In Venezuela, they don't have a food problem anymore. They produce all their own food that they need, right? Yeah. In Venezuela, they have a disposable income problem. They don't have any, right? Right. And the oil industry has gone to hell because the infrastructure was not maintained, right? Because they didn't kick in the right programs to keep the revenue up to maintain the infrastructure. They didn't. And they were a mono economy. And that's what happens in mono economies, okay? Right. We're not a mono, we're a diverse economy here, and that's why we still kind of thrive. Well, some of us thrive like hell. Some of us make it a little bit. Some of us barely make it through. And there's like 23% of us that are in poverty. Yeah. So I'm going to tell you right now that these guys that are like that now, these MAGAs, they've always been around in one form or another. I think it's generational too. I think some of these MAGAs, the boomer MAGAs, the great generation forerunners of them, your John Birch buttsuckers, okay, those guys, what they did was they bred a whole new generation into us boomers, right? And then us boomers that are maggot, redneck, idiot, haters, racists, we bred that into those of the next generation that we could. So that's why you got all these Nazi punks, right? Nazi punk music and all that crap, right? That's why you got that. It was bred into them by the propaganda of the old school fascists, right? And these people are all fascists. Don't fool yourself. They're not Nazis. They don't have swastikas on them. Some of them might keep the memorabilia, but they're not Nazis. They're fascists. And that's the same. It's actually worse because they got to be more covert here. And these weirdo guys, love America, love it or leave it. You don't like what Trump does, get the hell out of here. Yeah, it's the same mentality of those sons of bitches that we had during the Vietnam War. Who were telling all of us and millions of us got out and protested. Thousands got out in the streets and protested, and we were the peace movement. And yeah, and of course the hippie movement died in 67. This is what nobody wanted to buy into. Had all these people after that, 20, I'm a hippie. No, you're not a hippie. Hippie died in 1967. It died, right? Officially, it was dead as a movement. Well, people liked the way that it looked. People liked the whole idea of free love and let's get high all the time and all that. Well, okay, so those were remnants, artifacts of the hippie movement. But there was no hippies after that. People looked like hippies. Some people lived in communes and lived that old digger lifestyle that they had up in San Francisco back in those days. But no, there's no hippies. No. People could be fond of the nostalgia of hippiedom. Of course. I'm not beefing that. But then we had that contingent of what we called redneck racist scum. Well, I don't know what we called them then, but that's what they were. They were redneck racist scum. They weren't Christians, really. No. If they went to church, it was to please their wife so they could have a snooze in the pew, right? No. These guys have been around for a long time, and they've always had the opinion that we should dominate everything. We should own Canada. Mexico should be our slave country. All of the Western Hemisphere, we should be under our control. Now, isn't it funny when you look at what some people talk about? You know, you've got that Trump thinks that he needs to control the Western Hemisphere. Putin needs to control Europe and Eurasia. And China needs to control all of Asia. Yeah, this is what Trump thinks, right? Well, doesn't that sound quite a bit like 1984? It's just like 1984. See, I think that this old scumbag has put all this type of weirdo information in his brain over the years, and it's sat in there and it's fermented. It's gone fetid. It's putrid. It's a putrid bunch of ideology and thinking that is just based on whimsy. Trump is whimsical. He's full of whimsy. Oh, that looks good. Let's do it, right? Well, see, a lot of people like that. And that's what these sons of bitches that hung around all this time in the mentality. Now, some of these guys they're older than me. Some of these guys are 80-some years old. They're not much of a threat anymore. They influenced enough people in my generation, though. And the generation directly after us, the Xers, what they call I hate those names, Boomer, X, or Z, Millennial. I hate all that. Yeah, no, fuck that. I don't like that label. Okay, but the people that came from that my generation, a lot of them got that racist mentality. Okay, that patriarchal, domineering mentality. Thing about it is, when it comes down to it, yeah, some of them are pretty badass individuals. Yeah, they're pretty badass. They could whip some people in a fight. They could kill people. They could do all kinds of evil, violent shit, right? And some of them had money along with it. Look at some of the motorcycle gang. Well, look at the mafia. Look at that. Okay? Wrong. This shit is all wrong. All fucking wrong. Okay? Their thinking is wrong. Like when they asked that old guy, well, what did you think about what Trump's done? Oh, he loved it all. Yeah. There's people out, and that's what's wrong with the country, is that people think that way. What's wrong with the country? Now, if people were really Christians, if really over, I forget what the number, it's like 70% or 80% of our population claims to be Christian, why do so many millions of you act like you're not? Well, there's two reasons. The first reason is that is an ideal type of thinking and practice. It's not, sorry, man, it's not human. Yeah, okay, human created it, but it's not, no. It's too idealistic. We can't live by that. There are other ways we can live which are still humane, which are still kind, which are still loving, which are still full of compassion. They're not, but people don't practice the best parts of Christianity, and that's what's wrong. If they did, they wouldn't care if a person of color did whatever, right? They wouldn't care if somebody had a sexuality that wasn't their preference. They wouldn't care, like so many of us don't. So many of us don't care about those two things. They wouldn't care what religion we practice or don't practice. They wouldn't care. No. No, that's our business. What they care about is how our life is going. How are you doing? How can we help the bulk of us? How can we be of service? That's it. And that mentality is there. We have that mentality. It is present, and it is hopefully going to take over again this time. And maybe it'll stick. And here's my last. I reiterate this all the time. Okay. So these old guys with this weirdo thinking, and, I've had death threats, but I told them, I said, you're talking to a leftist who is fully armed and can defend and will defend himself if necessary. I'm not coming after you. You're not worth the bullet to do you in. You're not worth the dynamite to blow you all to hell. No, you're not. No, you're not worth that to me. Nobody is. Nobody's worth that. However, don't tread on me. And I mean that in a more positive sense. Well, I didn't get death threats anymore from that ilk. Those bots kind of left me alone. I think most of them are bots. I really do. I also think that this old mentality of this old love America, love it or leave it crap, that needs to go. We need to break that down. We need to keep breaking it down, okay? We need to break it down semantically, ideologically. We need to break it down biologically. Yeah, we need to keep deconstructing it, because that's the problem, is that people still think that way. This whole Maduro escapade, that's a polite term for it, debacle is more like it. This shows us exactly. And what it is, it's like without the pretense. It doesn't have the pretense of the Gulf of Tonkin and the domino effect. It doesn't have the pretense of Iraq and Saddam Hussein and weapons of mass destruction. It doesn't have those pretenses. No. And I think what has shocked so many people is that this guy, this orange diaper-wearing pussbag, has come out and just said said the truth about it. Well, that doesn't make him okay. No. He's just about the same, if not okay, as the guys that tried to hit us with the big lie. Well, his big lie is we're going to make everybody rich. Everybody's getting rich. The tariffs are going to make us all rich. We're going to take over the whole Western Hemisphere. We're going to take over Greenland. We're going to get all those rare earth metals, right? Because that's what that thinking was really all about. We don't need security. We have security in the Arctic. Come on. And, these pro-militaristic fascists have been spreading that lie about the Arctic for a long time. This is all out there. You can watch all of it here on YouTube. Yeah, you can watch it all and see it for yourself. But when you really look at the reality of most of these things, when you get some realistic, factual accounting and reporting of these things, it's not like that, okay? Greenland is just fine. Leave them alone. Leave everybody else alone. Just leave them alone. Help them out if you can. Yeah, it's like Ukraine, right? Well, nobody likes the war in Ukraine. No, who likes that? Putin? He doesn't like it. He's lost his ass there, right? Well, you know that Ukrainians, God, I feel for the Ukrainians. I mean, what would we do if somebody like Russia, who was a border mate of ours, so we think we don't have anybody like that, invaded us, like Russia has invaded Ukraine, like Russia invaded Georgia, right? Like Russia invaded, they'd like to reinvade Finland. Yeah, they'd like to reinvade the Scandinavia and take the whole thing over. They'd like to reappropriate Latvia, Estonia, and Lithuania. That's what they'd really like to do. And this is the kind of ambition that your orange puss bag and that gang of thieves with him would like to do. Why? Because they all get richer if they control these things. It's a business plan, my friends. It's not just imperialistic tyranny. It's more than that. It's an imperialist business plan of the billionaires, the oligarchs, and the corporate rings. That's right. The rings of corporations that control other rings of corporations, those kind of things. It's not a conspiracy. It's a business plan. Get it. Get it, folks. Yeah. Now, do me a favor. I hope you lasted until the end. If you did, leave me a like. Subscribe to me. Right. Give me a couple blue hearts. Let's go. Let's get after this thing. And I hope it's getting out there to you, and I hope you have enjoyed what I've shared with you today. I'll be back with more later.